Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. My name's Al. I introduced myself that way for one purpose. The big book tells me so. It says, you know, if you work this program, you're going to get recovered. And if it wasn't for 100 recovered alcoholics in the early days of AA, I wouldn't be here. It seems like those alkies knew something that I didn't know, and a lot of folks didn't know. They knew that an alcoholic wasn't going to do anything or get involved in anything that he couldn't get something out of. You know what I mean? And they showed me that I could get something out of this program. And what they did, they took a ladder with 12 steps on it and stuck it down in the hole I was in and helped me climb out. So that's why I'm here today, is because I got something out of AA. You know, I'm an alcoholic. Before I go any further, I'd like to thank Corey and the folks with Archives International for asking me back again. It's an honor to be anywhere at any time and anybody asks me to do anything. Because I grew up in AA and Alcoholics Anonymous the old way. And that is that we're a program of attraction rather than promotion. You know, we're not out there on the street corners, passing out flyers or coming to your house to save your soul or nothing like that. We really don't care where you get here or not. It's not our business, it's God's business. If God wants you to hear it, you'll get here. If you don't, you won't. That's what I found out. I'm just speaking for myself now. I don't speak for anybody else, just myself. So this is just some of the things I found out. I also found out that I do not speak for anyone else. I learned that very fast in AA. I only speak for myself. You know, I got no right to speak for another alcoholic or break his anonymity. I'm not sitting up here to tell you what to do or anything like that. I'm not a preacher, and I'm not a teacher, and I'm not a circuit speaker. That's for damn sure. I'm just an old drunk, just trying to stay alive and working the program Alcoholics Anonymous. And it told me that I'm responsible when anyone, anywhere, asks me to do something, that I will try to the best of my ability if I'm not sick and I'm spiritually functioning, I'll do my best to be there. Other than that, I don't do it. Because it's a program of attraction and not promotion, I have a little resentment I worry about is pigeon grabbers. I'm not a pigeon grabber. I really don't like pigeons. I found out in AA that pigeons they're not free birds. They only got one thing, and they go back to that roost they come from. If they're in Florida and they get out in Nevada and they got one sponsor, they're going to go right back to that pigeon roost. I'm not good at pigeon. A free bird in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's free birds. What happens when you get freed? And that is that any place on planet Earth that you land, there's a brother and sister there waiting for you to get there if you work this program, and you're never alone. So that's what I found about, and so I'm a free bird. And I don't go around grabbing somebody, being God and getting in his business, going around grabbing people and trying to sell them this AA program. I did that, and I'll tell you a little bit about my story. But first of all, I just want to get a few things straightened out before I go any further. And I want to thank Corey and the Archives International for asking me here. As I told you, I am an alcoholic, and the reason that I announced myself as a recovered alcoholic is because the big book tells me so. 35 years ago, if you knew me then, I hated God. I would have spit in your face if you mentioned it to me. I wanted to kill people, and I weighed 163 pounds, and I was malnutrition, and I was shaking like a dog passing a peach seed. If any of you can identify with that, seen that out on the farm, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I shook for months after I got at AA, okay? So anyway, that's how I got here. Well, as you can tell today, I'm not malnutrition. I love God, and I don't want to kill anybody. Now, so therefore, I have recovered from a seemingly hopeless disease in mind and body, because I did work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous to the best of my ability. Maybe not yours or somebody else's. I'm here today not to teach you anything. I'm here because I'm an alcoholic, and I'm the one, if I don't do what God wants me to do, I'm going to get drunk and die. It's that simple for me. So that's, clear why I'm here. Now, if I go in that bathroom, or I had gotten that bathroom before I come up here to speak, and I took a little shot of liquor, and say I come out here and got this guy over here, and I just hauled off and popped him one, right in the jaw. And he turned around and he shot me, and I'm laying there dead. I know what the rest of you are going to say. Oh, but for the grace of God, there go I. Now, ain't that going to do me a lot of good? Well, you know why I'm here now, don't you? So what I'll try to go ahead and tell you a little bit about how it was and what happened. I'll try to do it quick and not waste a lot of time. But, I said I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway, because a couple of my sponsors up in the big meeting in the sky said, once in a while you got to put a little laughter into this program. We cried enough when we got here, right? Now, I'll never forget this guy. He was on the Institution Committee in New York City many years ago. And I know he won't mind me telling part of this, but he spent 22 years in Sing Sing. Wonderful, wonderful man. I met him when he was 29 years in AA, sober, right? And he wouldn't mind me telling this, because several things I want to tell you to straighten out the history, part of the history of AA, how things happen, that he was, like the big book you probably read and know about, where it says the guy that was a jaywalker, and he kept jaywalking. Well, this guy, his problem was he hated cops. Every time he drank, he'd crack one. And he was back in the pen. 22 years because he couldn't hold that hand when he got drunk and he'd hit a cop. Well, he started getting better. He said, "Now, I ain't going to do that no more." And he'd get out and he'd hang around, and his plainclothesman would be around. And he'd haul off, hit one of them, back in again. Well, he got AA and Alcoholics Anonymous into prison. He got out, and he was a wonderful man. He had 29 years when I got here. And I never will forget, he said, you can intellectualize all you want to about this disease of alcoholism, and you're not going to get it across to an alcoholic. But he says, if you tell a joke, said an alky will pick it up in a New York minute. And so what happened was, we had him speaking at 97 General Hospital in Frankfurt, Germany. And I never will forget that night. The word got out of here was this, this guru from New York, right? He wasn't a guru, he was just a wonderful old drunk, right? But it got out, and boy, everybody in the press and people come there, and they're all sitting out there to get the message, and they're writing. And he got up there and he strolled up and he said, about what I just told you earlier, that, you get to tell a joke and pick it up in New York. Man, he said, now, a joke I'm going to tell you has something to do in a relationship with the old-fashioned chip system. And he said, and that says they tell you about if you hang around the edges of AA, your life is rough. You're on the wagon, right? And, and if you fall off, you get drunk. He said, but if you get into AA, he said, you ain't allowed to fall out, man. And they just tore the place up. He said, now, this joke I'm going to tell you, it says about this lady, says she did the same old thing every day of her life. Said every day of her life, said she would run out of her apartment in the nude. And she'd reach down and get her milk bottles and sneak back in every time. Said, but this one morning, said the milkman had a hangover, and he put the milk bottle a little bit further away from the door, and said the night before, wouldn't you know it, said the guy across the hall got drunk and walked out of his shoes, and they're sitting right out there in front of his door, across from her apartment. Well, sure enough, said this morning, said she ran out there to grab her milk bottles in the nude, come back up, and then I started to run back in, and the elevator light flew on, and the doors opened up. And there's this old drunk in there, and he went in his drunk tank. She panicked, dropped the milk bottles, grabbed the guy's shoes, and put them up here like this. And the old drunk says, Jesus Christ, said, I've seen it all now. Said, there's the guy that's really in, all the way up to his shoes. Says, it just goes to show you get into AA, you ain't allowed to slip out. So anyway, now that we got a little laughter, because we all cried enough, right? And if you're an alky out there in the audience, you'll understand what I'm talking about, and you'll laugh. If you ain't an alky, you ain't gonna know about it at all, though. Anyway, thanks for letting me. I did it. So anyway, we get everybody. Laughter's wonderful for the soul. That's the best thing we got. We cried enough before we got here. And God knew that we paid the price. And that's why he brought this program to planet Earth in 1935. For the first time, get this now, in recorded history of mankind, alkies have been suffering for centuries. The church and other people have killed them. 5,000 women were slaughtered on account of they were both alcoholic, had the tendency, and I'll explain what I mean by that. And maybe you can identify, maybe you can't, but just think of this one. This is another one. This guy, I don't know about you, but when I drank, I got a little giggly. And and I'm about half plastered, and I'm giggling. I'm sitting in church, and this guy was sitting in church and getting up and get the host, and at the church. And he said, well, this is the bread of Christ. And the old alky was about half giggling. He said, it looked like a piece of bread to me. And that's blasphemy, right? And this was centuries ago. And you know what they did to him, right? Well, that's an alcoholic, You do things like that, you don't even know what you're doing, right? You get too giggly, So these are some of the things that I just learned and I just like to pass on, As I say, I don't tell anybody what to do in AA, because who am I to tell anybody sitting out here to do anything in AA? I'm a drink away puking all over myself. That's why I'm here today. I'm here because I got to do what God wants me to do, or I'm going to die too soon. So this is it, This is the thing for me. So anyway, that's getting things started. And he said in 1935 that I'm going to help my children down there that I messed up centuries ago. When you read back, they were experimenting, and all that kind of stuff with giants and everything else. And then I guess we got caught in the middle there somewhere. And this is and he said, well, I got to get down on planet Earth, said, for them alcoholics. They've been defying all my ministers, and they've been defying all my writings and all the languages on planet Earth. Said, I got to get down there and do something before they blow that mud ball up. So in 1934, through Dr. Bob and Bill W. and Sister Ignatius on a third party, what happened? We got Alcoholics Anonymous got started. And it got started with no leaders. And just look what you saw today. Just stop thinking a minute how powerful that is. God is with no leaders. There was no, you just saw it last night. What a fantastic miracle that is, and no leaders. It just blows people's minds. That's the paradoxes of Alcoholics Anonymous. He didn't want people to understand it. He wanted to take care of his children that were alcoholic on planet Earth. And that's why you're seeing it growing so fast as it is, Because there was a lot of them that they as hard as they tried, whatever they did, they always drank. Whatever religion they were in, whatever philosophy they went, they couldn't stay sober. And it's like me. And I just say it for myself. I was, I tried my darnest to be a good guy. I wasn't a bad guy, just an alcoholic and didn't know it. I dedicated myself to the ministry at 12 years old. I became one of the presidents of one of the training unions of one of the churches at 16. But I was an alcoholic then, and I didn't know it, because I sneaked wine and beer on the church hay rides and things like that. So I didn't realize that was wrong, because we grew up in an era that a bunch of us would go around to all the different churches, and we were curious. It offended some of the people in our congregation, but we were all different sect and denomination. We wanted to find out what we could. So then I was just alcoholic and didn't know it, so that went along. So then I was blessed to get here, and he said, you've heard enough, Al. I didn't get here a minute sooner, a minute later than I was supposed to. I hit my bottom, and I was in AA. I knew nobody in AA or nothing about AA until the day I got to AA. That's how I got to AA, and I'll share that with you. My life before, I come from a broken home. My father was, I was divorced at 1 year old, so I was raised by my grandmother, a loving grandmother, and 2 old maid sisters, and an uncle, and my grandfather named Elijah on a farm in Kentucky. So I grew up that way. See, I grew up I had a beautiful family life and everything, and it was real great, and I was taught a lot of things. And then at 6 years old, my mother came and married again and come and got me and took me away back to the city. Just give you a little background, because that's when I'm here, how it was, what happened. Well, I was a little kid that asked a lot of silly questions. They couldn't answer them for me. I remember sitting in church and Well, when I went to church, I went to church in a buggy, pulled old Charlie with my grandmother at 5 years old. And I remember at 5 years old hearing things, God's chosen people are the Jews. And my little belly said, that can't be right. God loves everybody. You know, and ain't that something? And I ain't never had no education. I never been to school or nothing, but how's a little kid like that, something like that happen to you? You know, I walked by the beat of a different drummer from the time I was born, didn't know it. One time when I was in 6th grade, I was Rumpelstiltskin at a play. There's all these little elves with the elf shoes and all that. And did you know that on that chorus line up there that I was the only one in step? See, that was my life before I got to AA, you know. I'd work hard and I get up there and the next thing you know, we'd all be gone, right? I had a real good life. I had nothing. I can't blame nothing on my mother, my father, my stepfather, or anybody about my alcoholism. They were beautiful people. They did the best they could with the cards they were dealt. And I learned that in AA, and you know, and then I went on down. Once I got dumb in AA. So now I went to 14 different schools before I got out of high school, and that's some of my background. I worked very hard, you know, to get money to party and have a good time. I was a produce manager of a supermarket, 17. I was on a hotshot list with telephone companies and engineer at 17 and a half and 18, and studying engineering, and then I went into service. And it seemed like all through those times, I got one to tell you for you young kids out there, maybe you can identify with this. At 14 years old, I got the name Stretch. And how I got that name was because I took my dad's Sky, they called them Skies back then, Al Capone hats, and I had a coat, his overcoat, and I was 14, and I went down and bought my first pint of Mogan David. And boy, I was a cool dude, and I went to that teenage club that night, and I sucked on that old Sweet Lucy, and you know, I just got juicy, and I was having a big time, you know. I was letting it all hang out in a rough end drag dinner. I thought I'd really something. That booze just changed me into, you know, Dancing Dan the ladies' man, right? But I was an alkie. So here I was in there sharing my wine and all that with everything, and this lady come over, one of the girls, she just started a great big lip lock on me, you know, and I think, well, that's great. I like the women anyway when I get the booze in me, right? And so, but what happened was, see, my alcoholism was in at 14. I wasn't watching, knowing where I was at or what was going on. I was living in a dream world, you know, with them pink glasses on, and she happened to be the queen bee of the gang. Well, the next thing I knew, I'm out on the street up against the telephone pole with a 38 under my chin, and I'm stretching that night, and I'm talking. And I guess I'm sure God was with me that night, and that's when I got my name Stretch at 14. So if any of you young folks can identify with that, you might go check out and see if you're an alcoholic or not. You can save yourself a hell of a lot of misery, and I'm going to show you some of these other things that happened to me afterward. My life was like a yo-yo before I got to AA. I was up and down like a yo-yo, if any of you can identify with that. I'd go after something, and whether it was the love of my life, I lost me that, or the best job or any opportunity. I worked hard to get it, and then all of a sudden, you know, I'm like a bridesmaid, and never a bride, right? That's the way it was. I get almost to the wedding, and then boom, I'm being wondering what happened. Well, that went on in my life as I went along in the industry and all that. Up and down like a yo-yo. So I really consider alcoholism that I had is the biggest thief on the face of this earth. It stole from me all those years, and I knew nothing about it. Nothing about it. I lost my commission at 19 years old in the Army because I was an alcoholic and didn't know it. I know that after I got there. I says, well, you know, most alcoholics, anybody can be an officer in the Army. You know how our attitude is, you know, drinking. But not anybody can be a pilot in the Air Force. So I got and looked around and got me the best drunk I could drink with. It was had $3,000 flying time, and let him teach me, and we drank together and teach me how to fly so I could learn. And I became one of 5 men out of Alaskan Air Command to go to cadets back in the 50s. I went through most everything, but to make a long story short, I lost my commission. I lost my wings. Everything I ever wanted, I lost. Then I'm going to get into the family disease too as I go along with this little quick story through life. As I said, I consider it the biggest thief on the face of this earth. Now, it's a silly thing, after I did all that, I ended up back in Alaska, and I was alone, and I'm just sharing how this alcohol affected me and my attitude, see, my alcoholism, not the wasn't, it's my alcoholism. And I got to thinking, and that was bad for me then because I went and I got married. I got married, that's why I lost my commission, because a cadet cannot be married and go through the cadet program, and I got caught. And I remember, this is the family disease I'm sharing with you about. Now, I went on that leave, and the wedding was all set up. And mine was a split marriage, okay? And I was a Baptist, and she was a Catholic. And we ain't gonna let nobody tell us we can't get married or share any information whatsoever. We're gonna conquer the world. I got back there on that leave, and something God got through to me just like that quick. And I told my stepfather, it was all arranged and all that. I said, Dad, I said, there's something telling me not to do this. And not to do this. I think, how about help me out? I got to get out of town. And you know what he said? He said, oh, son, that's all right. Just have a shot early times. It'll be okay. Family disease? Huh? Exactly. Now, here I had been around her, in the service and all that, and I had grown a lot and learned a lot since I left Kentucky, Not all good, I'm not proud of that, But I was more experienced than this young lady, In the sexual department. That's part of the things we got to work in our steps. And that's 3 of them. And one of them is sex, and one of them is finance, and one of them is emotions, in order to get straight and get well. But I'm starting to share a little bit of family disease again. And I scared the living hell out of that poor woman, And she's just a virgin, right? And, because I'm alcoholic and didn't know it, see? Well, it caused a hell of a problem for her. Then things went on, and I lived a lie for 3 years. As an alcoholic. I went to Alaska, things blew up, and I knew there was something wrong, that I shouldn't have done it. And I went to my minister, and church I belong, they don't believe in divorce. But he said, I told him the story straight to him, and he said, well, son, he said, in your case, we understand, said, it may be a good idea if you just got that annulled, and and go on down life for a while. And I called home, and I said, I needed $300, and I said, please send me, it was on the weekend, I couldn't get to the bank, and I said, please send me $300 so I can get that wire to me, so I can get this check so I can put her on a plane and send her back home. And you know what the old family disease said? Said, oh, son, you're just a little tired up, so go down and have a few drinks and just cool down, you'll be all right. And they wouldn't send me the money, see. So what happened was, then it went on, then I lived a life, I lived a damn life for 3 solid years. Why? I'm alcoholic. What would Uncle Henry think? What would the minister think? What would her father, what's everybody else think? Hell, I'm down on the inside and I'm worried about what everybody else thinks. See what I mean? I'm just sharing a straight thing about my story and about what I learned about disease and alcoholism. It's a killer, #1 killer. It destroys more people than going, because I know about that too. We know it's the #1 killer.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
If you only knew how many falsified death certificates there was in our country alone, you'd be amazed. They sit there and, choked in their own puke falling out of the bed, and the old family say, well, she had this problem. She kept that, that tuna fish salad in the refrigerator too long, and she died with poisoning, Now, I've seen them done that way. The guys with the company and all that, they ain't gonna let nobody know that the wife died in the alcoholic convulsion to the bed, or that Uncle Henry died, when he's going down there and he was taking up the collection in the church, and he dropped there and blood's running out of him. Dang, he didn't die with alcoholism. He had an ulcer that popped. So I'm just sharing these things, the things that I learned, about how serious this killer disease is of alcoholism. And I'm not here to pretty it up. I mean, it's just the way it is if you're an alcoholic. So the quicker you can get numb about the killer disease of alcoholism and be willing to be taught the new way of life, the better off it can be for a lot of people, It was for me anyway. You can do whatever you want to do. I know what I have to do today to stay alive. So anyway, that's I'm trying to weave some of the family disease in there with my disease. a bit, and I was a loser all my life until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not proud of the things I did. I'm not proud of the fact that I lost 2 beautiful families. I screwed up 2 daughters. I had 2 beautiful wives. They loved me very much. But it was my alcoholism that destroyed the whole thing. And then to my second wife, it was our alcoholism. First wife wasn't alcoholic. Second wife was. Later on, I found out after I got sober in AA. But it was alcoholism that destroyed beautiful things. You know, and that's where I learned about it. You know, in AA, you know, we say, you know, it's like cleaning fluid, you know. And it will take all the spots out and take everything out as you hold the dearest to you. It'll take away from you. Well, that's what it did to me. And I didn't want it to happen. And I tried my darndest. So then I was like I told you about the yo-yo up and down. I was very successful. I got out of service. And lost 2 businesses before I was 28 years old, to make it quick. Lost 2 families I'm not proud of. I was a West Coast distributor of the disease. I flew around a lot. And I had a lot of amends to make around the country, you know. It wasn't my disease. But then one day, by the grace of the loving God, He got me to Alcoholics Anonymous. My last job, I was an executive for one of the top 200 companies in the country. And Apollo 11 was my last project that sent the man to the moon. And my territory was from Burma to Washington, D.C. And that's when in 1969, that's when that happened, and that's when I went crazy. And I was lucky enough that God got me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll share a little bit with you how that happened. Now, I'll be honest, because I didn't get here because I wanted to get here. I got here on a hustle. Because there was nobody that would take me. I knew I was dying. If you could get a knife in my stomach, if you can anybody identify at that time, I could just get the pressure off me, just the pressure off, right? I'd be okay. And the hot stuff was going through my veins. If I could just stop it. And there's a picture of me, my ex-father-in-law had painted of me. I was encased in glass, and I'm beating me, and I'm cut off to pieces like a stuck hog, glass all over me, cut up, and sitting there, dying in my own pew. And something happened. And I didn't know until 5 years later what had happened. That I could remember, because I'm going and I'm coming, you know, if you know that going and coming thing with the mind. I knew that I couldn't get to the hospital on my own. I had no family, no nothing, and my friends that lived in the neighborhood where I used to have a beautiful home in the Kohalals of Hawaii had invited me over for a Christmas dinner. But he said, Al said, if you're drinking, don't come near the neighborhood. See? So in my mind, there was no place to turn. So I figured, I said, well, just maybe I can hustle them daggone skid row bums down there, them, them holy rollers, you know. I can take anything. They come up with me slapping that Bible, and I can get anything just for me to get to the hospital. And thank God that I hit bottom in Alcoholics Anonymous. This is my story now, because those people out there knew an alcoholic. And they put AA and paid for it in the front of the directory. If I had to look it up and spell it, I wouldn't be here today. You know what I mean? So I thought, hey, last hustle. And I called, and the phone said, line disconnected. And I throwed that phone up against the wall, and I said, just like that damn bunch, they don't pay their damn bills. You know? Now, see, I'm going in and out, and to this day, I do not know what happened. The next I know was a sweet voice on the telephone at the answering service of Alcoholics Anonymous, and said, how are you? I said, I'm dying. Oh, I went into and I was dying. I said, I'm dying, and I said, I need some help. I said, I can't get to the hospital. And I didn't find out till months later that a couple of my guys that brought me my first meeting was named Lot and Neil. One was local. I'm an old Kentucky boy now, you know. And here was just local. He wasn't my color, right? That time, you know, my alcoholism. And they were over at my place in 15 minutes. And usually on a 12-step, cold turkey 12-step call, it takes a half an hour to an hour and a half to get somebody to go out to help somebody. And they were in my place in 15 minutes. I'm there with blood all over me, choking my own puke. I'd been shooting a stub nose 38 off my lanai. I'd busted up all the furniture, tore up all my ex-wives' pictures. You know, I was lost. I was dying. You know? And what happened? God sent these two AA angels. Lot and Neil. And I was worried, boy, I was watching, how old Alky is. I got one eye cocked, and one of them trying to get the blood off of me, and the other one's in there, and my boot was in there in the kitchen. That was a mess. And I was worried about what he's going to do to my boot. The others cleaned me up. He got me straight and take me down to the hospital. And that was back in the days when it wasn't popular to be an AA here. Have all these rehab centers with all these outfits with all this money to get their wallets paid for to take care of old guys like me. They didn't want you in the damn hospital. Thank God the Alcoholics Anonymous, that they knew how to sneak me in. They had contacts, right? And they stuck me in the hospital and saved my life. I got to remember that. See, I got to remember that today, how serious this stuff was. So by the grace of God, I got down there, and I'm sitting down there, and I wasn't just a nice guy when I got here. I found out later I was cussing out the nurses and the doctors that was trying to save me. I said, the very audacity of you to throw a yellow blanket on top of me in my $50 trousers. Where did you get your damn education? This is terrible. I got to tell them that was the state I was in. And about 10 minutes to 7 that night, I looked up, and there they was. See, when I got there, I said, thanks, guys. I didn't care whether I ever seen them again. I done had one last one. I used them, right? And they were there, and they said, they're going to let you out of here in 10 minutes. And I said, well, boy, I was smart, Ellie. I said, well, how in the hell do you know? And they said, I never will forget, they were real pleasant. They said, well, we know. They were, and here's the key that kept me going. They said, they didn't tell me what I had to do. They said, well, we're going to an AA meeting. Would you like to come along? And I know the feeling I had at that time, at that moment. I'd have went to hell with the devil just to have company. I was so alone and afraid and lost. I surely had somebody looking over me. It was a far greater me. I wouldn't be here. So anyway, I said, yeah, I didn't know where we were going to go down on the bridge, drink some wine or what. I got in that car, and I never will forget they were saying, oh, you got to die to live. You got to lose to win. Got to give it away in order to keep it. And I'm going nuts. I said, my grandmother told me if I kept drinking like this, I was going to end up with these Looney Tunes. And I said, I have arrived. That was the thoughts going through my head. And they pulled that car over near the governor's mansion there on Beartania. And I said, my God, they're just like gangbusters, man. They own this damn. What's this? This is all a bunch of drunks. And it was impressing me. And here I'm shaking, like that. And they on each side of me. See, I didn't get here on my own. Lot and Neil was on each side of me. And I sat in that church. And I sat there on the couch, and there was an archway here and an archway over there. And I never used an excuse to go to the bathroom. And I found that open window in that thing because I was looking way out quick because I had 2 reservations that night. If you'd have mentioned God to me, I'd have spent your base. I didn't have my way out. I'm gone. I got to tell you how it was. I was sitting there in that church, and that lady down there leading the meeting, that bitch leading the meeting, she's saying, a higher power as you understand it. And I'm saying, come on, say God, so I can get the hell out of here. And she wouldn't do it. And boy, that blowed my mind. I never seen nothing like that in my life. From all the chapels, churches, synagogues, things I've been in the world, I never heard nothing. Oh, okay. I had no excuse. I had one other though, and that was God. And about halfway through the meeting, or just before that, this little guy stuck his hand around and said, well, I'll be damned, Al. Said, I'm sure glad to see you made it. Well, boy, he said, God damn. And I said, First of all, I said, well, it was okay because he was my old drinking buddy, and I was so surprised. But you know, my alcoholic mind flipped, and I said, he's in church talking like that. See that man? That boy, I see it. See what I mean? Now, this guy was named the Penguin. When we used to drink, he was a brilliant guy in stock markets and all that. And we'd go out on Saturday night or Sunday, and I'd be all dressed up. And I was called the Patch, and he was the Penguin. And I used to carry an eye patch around in my pocket to influence the ladies, right? And I'd work on this eye. And we'd go in these bars, and he would talk about, you know, heard that thing, A.L. Hutton, you know, on TV, Hutton, and everybody stopped and listened. Well, he was that way, and he was getting everybody wanted to buy us drinks. So we'd play that game. And it was sun shining all the time, and you always had an umbrella with the Penguin, right? And so we sat in there one night, and I'd come back, and this is our act, right? We were doing that night. And I never seen him again after that. And I come back from the bathroom, and I done switched eyes. I said, yeah, they're a bunch of smart so-and-sos, right? I said, I done switched eyes on them, and they don't even know what the hell's going on, right? So this was the kind of thing it was there to last with the drinking. The next Monday, you know, we looked all over the islands, the old life, the old bars, the old nightclubs. That's all I knew. I didn't know any other life. And we worried and concerned about my friend. And what had happened, I found out later, was that the night we lost him, he messed his pants and fell asleep in the bar bathroom, and AA got him that night. And he'd been in AA 3 years when I come in the doors, you know. That was a blessing, and that was some of the blessings that I had when I got here. And I was watching, and then after that, something very strange happened. I'm waiting for that next soccer. And he said, you're going to pay before you pray. You got to put that and get all that money out there, and then they'll pray for you. Man, I ain't never seen nothing. That wasn't going. I said, man, we already through halfway to meeting. Ain't nobody put out no collection plates. Well, this was strange to me because that was one of my reservations. I'm going to boop, get out of here. Now I'm going to go. I need a drink. Well, at the end of the meeting, they're just going through. She ain't saying God, and I ain't got nothing. And the other guy ain't taking no money. And at the end of the meeting, the guy that ended up being one of my sponsors later on, big, huge wine, got up and he said, got that plate out. Boy, my mind says, I got them now. They're going to say you pay before you pray. You know? And I said, I got them, boy, and I got my old feet itching. I done made my way out there. Going to get in there and go to bed and get out that window, right? And he fooled me. See, God was working through him that night. He said, we're self-supporting through our own contributions. Put in what you can. Take out what you need. We ain't looking. It blowed my mind because I was all set to go, boy. And I was doubly teed off because it happened to be one of those plates with the blue velvet in it. And that definitely made me mad. I done spotted that from his, even though I was in the shape I was, right? But anyway, they didn't know me from Jack the Ripper. And I saw something in there that night. Those three things happened. I saw all ethnic groups, everything. I never seen nothing like it in a church in my life was coming with that coffee pot, all happy and smiling and not fighting it. And I couldn't believe what I saw in that church that night. And they didn't know me from Jack the Ripper in that AA group. And after the meeting, they come and hugged me, who had no life left, and took me with them to their home, and they had a big barbecue. And then they kept feeding me and all that, and they was concerned, not about money, not about anything. It was spiritual. You could cut the spirit with a knife in that place that night. You know? And they was worried about this one drunk that was dying. And that's how I got here. Now, how much more time I got? How much, please? How much time? Minutes? 50 minutes? Okay, good. I'll get this other done fast. So what I did, I got into AA. And I was one of those guys that lived in a penthouse when I got here. You know, I lived in a penthouse. And they told me in AA, said, you can get off the elevator right here, Al. You know, and they said, man, we got this book. Said, God brought this to us in 1935. Said, it's an ass-saving book. Said, we're in the ass-saving business, not the soul-saving business. Said, we're going to get your ass saved first. If you don't do that, first things first, bottom line, you know. It ain't going to have to worry about if you take another drink. Worry about soul anyway. They taught me about first things first. But see, I was defiant. Because I was smarter than everybody else, see? I'm the ex-executive. My sponsors used to tell me, yes, X, Al, X. I'm down here now, you know, looking up. And that finally got through. Thank God they sponsored me in spite of me, right? Because I didn't need no sponsor. I was too smart. I knew what God was. I knew what prayer was. I knew all those things. I worked them steps the first week. And half of the daggone traditions the second week. And I got spirituality. Didn't know what the hell it was, but I got it. So they tried to get me the big book, that one that God wrote here for us alcoholics. Save my butt, first, and then we work on that later. And you know what I did? In defiance, because I'm so smart, I told them, I don't need that. I got to get my eyes open first. Oh boy, God had a message for me there. I got that eye opener playing all that crap, right? And the bottles and stools, and I went insane. I grabbed the Bible and I come to the meetings, and I went through a phase of alcoholism, which is true if you're really interested in the study of alcoholism from an academic standpoint and a college standpoint, psychiatric and the medical profession. You'll find out what I'm telling you tonight is not unusual.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom?
I abruptly come off alcohol on the street. I grabbed that Bible. I had some friends in another organization, and I ended up thinking that I was Jesus. And I let my hair grow like Jesus, and I grew a beard like Jesus, and I had the Bible, and I come into AA meetings to straighten all you drunks out, because I knew that God had sent me with a message for you alcoholics. I had a black brother friend from French Guiana. He was 6'7". And he was a very dear friend of mine in another organization, and they sent to French Guiana and got the material and had it sent over. And their wives come up to my shack I ended up in and measured me and made my dashiki. Now this dashiki was a special dashiki for those that were worthy from Africa, and it had the gold phoenix on it from Egypt, front and back. And it had them big arms, And when I'd raise my arms, the wings would spread. And I come into the meetings, and I'm going to teach you about God. And all the guys in the family said, well, keep coming back, Al, we love you. Boy, my old chest would build up like that, and I'd leave that place, boy. I knew I'd done what God wanted me to do. Took me several years to find out that they were telling all their sponsees, say, you mess with this program, that's how you get. See, they knew alcoholics. They were messengers of God themselves, the real messengers of God about alcoholics. See? And they loved me, and then they took care of me and wouldn't let nobody hurt me. So I went through that. I'd come to church, I said, these people just don't understand. And I'd get up there and I'd say, it's dogma. D-O-G-M-A. Don't you understand? Cut the ma off, flip side dog, and you got God. There wasn't nobody listening to them. I found out I was outnumbered, and I'm catching the wrath of hell all the time, right? It just kept getting worse. My way, I was so smart, right? I wouldn't let you know I didn't know anything. See what I mean? I wouldn't humble myself to let some old wet-brained derelict, they stuck a needle in his heart, whispering will and brought him back to life off the street. It had 16 years sober. No, how can that fella help me, Hey, be careful. You don't have to go through what I went through, or you might not make it. So then the next thing I went paranoid. I'm going to tell you to laugh about it. I went through paranoia. If you mess with a program and you're an alcoholic, things are going to happen to you. That's what happened to me. So boy, I was in defiant. I ended up in this shack, and I ended up in this shack on a hustle. Now get to how sick I was. I figured that you guys had a secret organization in AA, and the only way that I could be accepted was to get down in the crap with those others around AA that were living on the Bowery and down there in a shack. And I moved in there, I hustled like hell, I got in that shack, and I had leather furniture and big TV and a new Buick, and I went down thinking y'all would accept me in AA. That's how I got to that shack. It was on a hustle. My brilliance got me in that shack, right? Well, when I got down there, they really cleaned me up and fast. $500 set of tools, $2,000 ripped up machines, busted out the windows. I had a hell of a price to pay for that love I had for the alcoholics. And they would say, some of them are sicker than others, Al. They were trying to protect me. And I'd say, they got no compassion for the alcoholic. They got no love or understanding. And I'd bring these people in, they'd rip up my stuff and steal stuff from me and all that, and it just got worse and worse. So actually what happened to me was, doing my way, I went bankrupt, destitute, insane, living in a shack, welfare case, state of Hawaii, and starving to death. That's because I was so smart. See, I would not humble myself to be taught. You know what I mean? And then with pain, it says in the big book, says, see, God knew what he was doing. He didn't want me to go around telling the damn world, and I got this program about it, what not to do in AA, right? You don't have to do this stuff, you don't have to hurt like I did, right? So anyway, I'm out there and I go through another stage of paranoia. So I didn't know what that was at first. But boy, I ended up in a shack, and all the neighbors are Samoans and Hawaiians and Japanese and Paques and Puerto Ricans, and I said, and all their houses was gray houses. I said, they're all communists. And I went and I said, boy, I'd already painted my home out of white. I painted it like down home on the farm, all solid white, with green window shades around it, build up new screens. I was Jesus, see? And I had my hammer, and I had my lederhosen, and boy, I was hammering and sawing and doing all this all day long, and running AA 24 hours a day, They said, 90 days, 90 minutes. I go to meetings. I said, I didn't go. Hopefully, that maybe you don't have to go through what I went through. Now, next thing that happened was, I had this problem with the damn post office department. I'm sitting out there, and I'd go to meetings, and I sit there and messing with my mail, and they're doing everything like that, and the garbage people, the CIA and the FBI are on me, and I'd be walking over my shoulder, and I'd have to fold my garbage and tear that up, and they were messing with that. And one day I'm sitting out there with all these problems. One of the sponsors says, hey, Allison, just come to think about it. He said, think about this now. Just maybe, if you took the combination lock off your mailbox, you might get some mail. Now, how about that for being sick? Huh? Now, see, God had given me all this information. I had special plants with aluminum and certain metals and pyramids to get that pyramid power to grow these special things that I had in my little shack. And I had music, and I had space formulas on the wall, and I had all kinds of things in there that the average people weren't privy to have. And so I went down and spent $75. I'm on welfare, but spent $75 to buy me a lock. Now, at 7 o'clock every morning, I built me a flag stand out the front of the shack. This was after I went and painted it red, white, and blue, and raised the flag at 7 o'clock every morning before I went to my first meeting. But I put the lock on the door because God didn't want me to let anybody see in there all these special secrets I had. So one loving person that sponsored me and inspired me was up at my house one day and said, Al said, I can't understand how you spend all that money for that lock. Said, but I know that there's a lot of things in it you wouldn't want the public to see in here. Said, but what confuses me, he says, you bought that lock, but the whole back of the shack is rotted out and you can walk right in. You can just walk right in. I was so pissed, kind of pilled, but then I thought it was just all beautiful, and I had me a spring, screen door spring, and I had a 10-penny nail on the 2x4 behind the ice box, and I had it hooked up, and that was my ice box, right? But that whole back was rotted out. And you know what I told him? I said, you don't understand. There ain't none of them smart. Nobody going to come in here. I said, because I'm a kahuna. That's high priest, if you don't know what that is in Hawaii. That's high priest. I said, I got all them snake heads and the pieces of rabbits out there, and all them around the back there, they're not about to come in. See, and I went and I did some other weird things with it. That's spooking that place big time. All because I had abruptly come off alcoholism. And to show you what happens, I learned later on. When I abruptly come off alcohol on the street with no medical help and all that kind of stuff, what happened was that I was starving to death, okay? And when you're starving to death, the cells eat up the cells. And the weakest cells are the brain cells. And after the 22nd day of fasting, if you're 40 days and 40 nights out on the desert, you're going to have some visions too, I'll tell you, without a drink. I had them, and I went through that. But I know that that's not unusual. And I know that I'm not unusual because I've met people around the world in my travels that are of Jesus too. I met Mary Magdalene's. I met John the Baptist. I've met Abe Lincoln down in Louisville. He's an ex-congressman, hit bottom same way I did. And he come to, boy, and he's shaved his beard like Abe Lincoln, boy, and he comes starting in like that in the meetings, you know. But that's all. But that's why A's got this thing says, this too shall pass. See, these old alkies know what goes on. Say, don't be judging your brother or your sister out there that's not drinking. It's not drinking, I said. Because if they are, they're going to go through things, and you got to love them like God loves them. And if you don't, you might have to pay another price, you know. So these are the things that I learned that I pass on, that I try to pass on. Be gentle with the people who come into AA that aren't drinking. Keep an eye out for those that you can smell, and the people that come in for other motives than Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a lot of movements around AA that come in to try to steal people out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and lead them off to other things. Well, that's a lower power as far as I'm concerned. That's not the higher power. That's not God. God wants his children protected, and he's going to take care of them. And I've seen what happens to people that do things like that, you know. So I just want you to know this is not unusual. So if you got anybody in your group that is acting a little funny like that, understand them, love them, just like they love me, until I can get straightened out. Because it takes time, and you're not going to learn unless you learn this thing. So anyway, to go from that real fast, to tell you, and laugh at myself, I went back, and I'll go up and down like a yo-yo again. And when I got in there, finally got into AA, I give up, and I become teachable. Since that time I got teachable, I've been to 38 different countries. I ended up being the program manager for air traffic control for the Army in Europe. I became supporting the commander of the Pacific out of Yokosuka, Japan for the Middle East War, his command ship, as the director of communications for the Navy in Japan. All these things had happened after I got sober at AA, you know? And this is the miracle of it all. I had Arkansas doc told me one time when I first did, he said, Al, if you be alcoholic like I be alcoholic, and you work this program that God brought here in 1935 to the best of your ability, you'll far supersede your highest expectations in life. Then he had this little quirky habit of pause, and then he'd say, but if you're an alcoholic like I be alcoholic and you mess with this program, it's going to do a job on your butt. And you see, I already told you what it did on mine. Yeah. But see, in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says pain is a touchstone of progress. Well, let me tell you, I had enough pain, and one day I said, God help me. When I did that, I got dumb, I got a sponsor, and I let them old wet marine derelicts teach me. See, I didn't even know what God was. My mind jumped back to 5-year-old kid as what God was. I didn't know it. I didn't know what prayer was. I thought prayer meant I sat in church on Sunday like a little sissy and say nice thanks for everybody. Now, that's how sick I was when I got to AA. Now, not everybody's as sick as I was, okay? I know that out there. A lot of them got more brains than that. But that's how sick I was. Until I humbled myself and I looked in the mirror and said, I do not know what God means. And I says, as I don't understand you, then my life changed. Then I had become the second step to come of fact, that God said that he could restore me to sanity. And 2, he did not say would, he only said could, and then it hit me, that I had some work to do to learn what God was. And I found out it was a loving God, you know, he loves me to death. He's got a sense of humor too, mine is. I don't know about you, but he got a sense of humor. If I go out there and drink and I'm looking at the crawl back in the doors of AA, and I say, why me? He says, because you pissed me off, you dummy. He said, because I give you this program. If you was working step 1, you wouldn't have drank. And he laughs, and he lets me hurt a little more. And then I get to appreciate him a lot more and listen, you know. So that's part of the whole thing. So then I ended up going to 38 different countries. Now at the 5-year point, I got to share this with you because I got a mark on my arm to prove this. Here I was 5.5 years later from destitute, welfare case, starving to death in Hawaii, and I'm hunting white rhino on my own elephant in Nepal. Now if that ain't a miracle, I don't know what is. I'm out there hunting white rhino that day, and back in those days we had the ball players wore these pantyhose type things, you know. That was the gig at those times, football player and all that. And curly hair. My hair was all curly. And boy, I'm on the pin. And I'm having a ball in AA, right? I'm going to places that, well, I've been to most of the places that Christ had been in his big circle he made out there. That's another gift. I may not have time to go into all this. But anyway, I was out there and I thought I was on a drunk, or, you know, having a hangover, or, you know, I didn't know what the hell was happening. So I grabbed my arm and I pulled my arm till the blood spurted out. And when the blood spurted out, I knew it wasn't dreaming. I knew the miracle of God. It happened to me. But I was still kind of a funny guy around AA in them early days, you know, and before that I was too smart too after I got an A, and I go around judging these newcomers. I said, well, boy, this person's going to really make it. I ought to share some of this real good information I learned about the arts, mass hypnosis, and a lot of other things that the adepts know, you know. And I damn near killed a couple kids. Blew their mind, made them really sick around AA. Now, I told you about, I'll go back to real quick because then I'll come up with a second. That was my first, was 8 months of sobriety. I found out I couldn't stay sober myself, but we can stay sober. I learned that in AA. I learned all this in AA. And then about the 8th month, I'm sitting in a very peaceful day, very spiritual day. The wind's blowing through. I had a ceremonial plate of General Pay above my TV, and there was a Cutty Sark, and I loved the Cutty Sark that my ex-father-in-law had painted. All of a sudden, I'm meditating there, you know, about life, about God, and all of a sudden that plate, something hit that plate, and it fired up on that Cutty Sark. I found out later was that some of the wind, and anyway, the trees had done something, and the light come through and hit that and went up there right later on. But then it scared me. And it was right there because I was the captain of my own ship and the master of my own destiny. I was an Abe Lincoln guy, you know, Abe, honest Abe. Well, I'd walk a mile to give you a damn nickel back, right? Didn't know I was alcoholic though, see? But that's the way I was, and I was a self-help man. I went to school. I studied at night. I studied law school at the University in Chicago and never got a degree for it. Because I'm a drunk and I'm working at nights, I had to study the law so I could do my job I had, which I shouldn't have had on account of alcoholism in order to do the contract work the next day. See what I mean? Alcoholic. So anyway, these things brought me along, and it gets pretty sad what happens when you're an alcoholic like I was, because you work so hard. You're not a bad person. We're not bad people, man. We're just alcoholic and don't know it. That's what I found out, the whole bottom line, and I'll close with it. But that was my first spiritual awakening. Now, when that light went up on that Cutty Sark, and I said, if I'm the captain of my own ship and the master of my own destiny, and a great big tsunami comes up, you know about them 100-foot waves? Boy, it hit me. I ain't going to make it. And then spirituality hit. It takes a crew to man them sails. And then that's when I got AA. I can't, we can. We can fight this demon with the help of God and another brother, sister, and AA. Well, I go along and I get in Hawaii and I'm going all these things that's happened to me and God, you know, and I'm learning about a lot of things about God and my third step, and I'm all over. It's taking me, I don't know why it happened, I'm taking me everywhere. And I come back to Worms, Germany. And I told you about them two guys that I hurt with my stuff, you know, by judging them and putting something outside AA in the AA meeting. And I had to go back and make amends to them people before I had any success with sobriety, which I did. But this morning I'm going to work and I say my morning meditations. Now this is 5.5 years later, so now. Now I told you about earlier that I didn't remember all the stuff that happened that first day. Well, I'm going to share with you what part of happened this morning, 5.5 years later, of what I said that caused me to be where I was. The other parts I still don't know today, even today. But this is very profound with me. I'm shaving, sitting there, and I say my morning prayers, meditation. That room lit up and scared the living bejesus out of me. And I don't know how to explain it except inside my mind, it blew out like a PA system. It said, I did not save your old drunk ass to be carrying all them other messages. If I had them, I'd have sent somebody from the Catholic Church, the Baptist Church, the Buddhist Temple, Knights of Columbus, or the Masonic Lodge, and left me with this thing and said, who did I offend? Them angels from AA, Lot and Neil, that God sent to save my life. That took 5.5 years just to come to that. But see, this is just part of my story, you know. That's how sick I was. But I want to tell you that since that day, I have never, and if any of my friends out there and my family sitting out here ever see me around an AA meeting, bringing something outside of AA into there, I hope you get on me real fast. Because if you do, you'll be saving my life. And that's why I keep myself involved in AA. I've traveled 38 different countries after that. I've been privileged to do my part. What little bit was as insane as I was, but I didn't know that you didn't take Bibles into Russia when the Iron Curtain was there. I know what happened to them in those days. They were down in Siberia, you know. But what I did, I took what happened to Joe and what happened to Alice. Some comic books with me, and I'd lose them. Everywhere I go, I'd lose them, you know. I lost them, you know. I ain't well, you know what I mean? I'm trying to get sober. But they were a pictorial, and in all languages can understand a picture. So I would drop them in the men's restroom and the women's restroom and on the planes and on the trains, and you know, that was my way of trying to do my part. Trying to give back what I so freely got for nothing. That's what I do today, the best I can. In my travels, I've been one of the founders of 3 international English-speaking AA groups around the world: Germany, Japan, and the South Pacific. That's what's kept me sober. Being involved and doing the best I could. Now, that don't mean I'm telling you that I got caught in it. I had to go to an institutionalized AA meeting every day. Because how in the world could I be the PM for air traffic control and be in an AA meeting every day? What did happen was I learned in AA how to take the AA program in my life and all my other affairs out in the world. And that's what it's all about. And I'll share one thing and I'm going to quit, and I'll share with, and a God-loving guy was a brewmaster in the Big Book, is my grand sponsor, okay? And a beautiful old man named Clancy Utterhart, not to get mixed up with Clancy I from California. This is Clancy Utterhart. He's the big meeting in the sky. He died with 51 and a half years in AA, and he transistorized on the 10th of June, AA's birthday. Now, Clancy, when he was first in there, he had the brewmaster, Clarence Snyder, as a sponsor. Well, Clarence knew me through Clancy, so I had worked 11 years now, coming back from destitute, right? And I had my new wife on my arm with a formal, and I'm in a tuxedo, and I'm at the Sheraton Hotel, one of the top hotels in Washington, D.C., at one of the biggest meetings in the world for communication people. The presidents, vice presidents, the generals of the armies and all that were there, and I was sitting at a table with my wife at 11 years, thanks to this AA program and you beautiful people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the tablecloth was blue. The old blue chip was, I'll never will forget that. So I had arrived, don't you understand? I'd really worked in founding the spiritual awakening. Well, I'm out here this one day at the club on Highway 1 where my grand sponsor was speaking. And I'm sitting there with 3 or 4 people around, and he walks by and he hears me saying how I got hurt with unapproved AA literature. And he points his finger at me and he says, Al, you are full of, you know what? Embarrassed me, man. I flinched. I wanted to smack him. But it was like a cylinder came down over me. I couldn't move. And in the meantime, he kept going. He said, if you were really in the AA approved literature, Al, you'd know what Bill said. Well, he had me because I didn't know what Bill said. He did. He was one of the old guys, right? He said, Bill says, now that we've finished kindergarten, and I flinched, I want to hit him again. Because he's embarrassing me in front of, my sponsees and other friends in AA, right? And here's what he told me, and I'll share it with you. Put his hand up, and he said, in order to get around to it, he said, you have got to study and learn the traditions and work them as hard as you did the steps in order to get the freedom that the book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells you about when you got to go through the archway to a new dimension of living. He said, without it, you're lost. Man, that was powerful at 11 years. But I'm so glad he did it. Because me, the old alcoholic nature, and I said, well, I'm going to check that dude out and see if he really knows what he's talking about. Well, let me tell you something. He knows what he's talking about. It has relieved me. It's a 12 and 12 program. It's not a 12-step program. I learned after that. The 12 steps only relieves you when you get to step 9, relieves you from the compulsion to drink. That's why we got so many people around that got caught in the time zone. They're going around just talking, tiptoeing through it till miserable as hell. But they ain't gonna let you know it. They ain't worked the conditions. They haven't been through the still of life, you know, like we've been through the still of life as alcoholics, you know. Up, down, in and around, dripped out 100 proof bottle and bond alky. We were lost. That's all. But God gave us a new life without booze, and we had to come here as babies to learn. See, and I had to learn even at 11 years, and I went back and did that, and I got freedom of body, soul, and mind. Thanks to that beautiful old guy, Clarence Snyder, which had the guts to break away from that bunch in Akron, had a resentment, told T. Williams one night, that was turning to the church, he says, we're going to start our own meeting for alcoholics up in Cleveland. And right then, if all of you know a little history of Alcoholics Anonymous, that's when AA boomed all over the country and Canada. Was when they left T. Williams' house down there, and that night, they jumped up, and T. Williams and the others said, you can't do that, you're going to fail. God don't want that, right? Well, look what happened that God didn't want. You saw it last night, right? Even from China out there in Mongolia, right? And with no leaders. Think about that. Just think about that, folks, what the power is in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you got any sense at all. You know, the power, but no leaders in Alcoholics Anonymous. Of how it's done without any mechanism that's grown like this, right? It's unbelievable if you just stop a minute and think of how lucky we are to be in Alcoholics Anonymous and to have a program that God loves us and he wants his alcoholic children and also the ones in Al-Anon that our disease hurt. See, he's taking care of them too. See, he loves them too because they suffered a hell of a problem because we did it to them. We caused their problems. So I'm a three. I'm A. I believe in A. I don't believe in going a lot of other things unless I'm asked. Now, I've spoken a lot of Al-Anon meetings, but I don't go to Al-Anon. I only speak there as an alcoholic, because I tell them straight skinny about the alcoholic side of things. I don't go into all this other stuff, but I ain't got their problem. I've got my own problem. So I work my problem with Alcoholics Anonymous and nothing else, and I have my daughters back today that I almost destroyed that love me. You know, I got grandchildren. I've got old friends that I hurt. When I went around and made amends to them honky-tonk angels and all them people that I hurt. And while doing that and going to meetings around the world, my life keeps getting better. So I'm here today for one thing to share with you that you can be married 2 or 3 times and all that kind of stuff. And by God, if you're out there like that, you can tell you right now that if you get Alcoholics Anonymous, you can have a happy, joyous, and free life like you've never experienced in your life before. Right where you are, just come as you are. And that's the beautiful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. In closing, I'll say I've learned this. It's the only fellowship that I've seen as I travel the world that really means what they say. Come as you are. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.